I'm Naomi Khan. I am 22 years old, born into a conservative South Asian family living in a small town on the outskirts of Houston, Texas. My story doesn't start with love, nor does it end with a fairy tale wedding. It starts with a shadow, the shadow of a woman who used to be my whole sky. My sister, Amina. Amina is 4 years older than me. She was the first person to teach me how to tie my hair, the only person to secretly play music in my bedroom, and the first person to tell me that there was a world outside that gate not as scary as our parents said. She had dreamed of being an architect. She had designed an entire house out of cardboard and drawn it on the walls with crayons. "Someday, I'll build a house for both of us," she whispered, as they hid under the covers from their parents after prayer. But when she was 18, her dream was suffocated by a name: Zaid. He was 33 years old, my father's business partner, wealthy, looked like a gentleman businessman, until he married my sister. I was only 14 at the time, not old enough to understand what an arranged marriage was. All I knew was that after the wedding, Amina stopped smiling. He moved in with us for a short time. The reason given was so Amina wouldn't feel lonely. I remember the look in her eyes when he touched her shoulder. Not happiness, but horror. She began to lose weight, become quieter. Once, I saw a bruise on her wrist, but when asked, she said, "I tripped." My sister disappeared after 8 months of marriage. Disappeared, not dead. At least, no funeral, no goodbye, nothing but a sentence from my father. "Amina has left the family. Don't mention her again. She is no longer my daughter." My mother cried silently for 2 nights and then stopped. All traces of her, photographs, books, drawings, were burned. I stole a pencil plan from the house and hid it under my mattress. That was the only evidence that Amina had ever existed. My father was a strict man, that was not unusual. But since Amina's disappearance, he became even more authoritarian. He declared, "Women are troublemakers if they don't know how to obey. I won't lose another one." And I became the scapegoat. I don't know where Amina is. If she's alive, she's probably hiding in some small room or living under a new identity. If not, I wrote her name silently on the cover of my college notebook every day as a secret ritual. When I graduated with honors in sociology, I carried my degree home with a heart full of hope. I thought my father would be proud, at least pleased that I refused to live a dissolute life like other girls. I had never loved anyone, never rebelled violently. I thought I was a good enough daughter. I thought wrong. The day I got home, my mother didn't come out to greet me. My father sat in the living room, holding a cup of tea, his eyes glued to his phone screen. "Hello, Dad," I said. He didn't look up. "Graduated?" I nodded. "And I had an opportunity to work at Daughters Unbound. They support immigrant women. I interned there all my senior year." He curled his lips. "Nonsense. You're marrying Zaid next month." I was speechless. "Zaid? Which Zaid?" I asked again like a lunatic. "Zaid? Amina's ex-husband. He needs a new wife, and he hasn't received his dowry yet. You will redeem this family's honor." The blood drained from my face. I wanted to believe I had misheard. But my father's eyes did not lie. They were as hard as stone, as sharp as a knife. "You want me to marry the man who used to be my sister's husband? The man who made my sister disappear?" He stood up and threw the teacup on the ground. The porcelain shattered. "Don't mention it again. Who do you think you are to question me? Do you think you're different? I didn't raise you for 22 years so you can smear ashes and chaff on my face like Amina." I tremble. "I will not marry him," I said, my voice thin as a thread but clear. My father slapped me hard. I fell down, my ears ringing. "You don't have the right to say no." That night, I lay in bed, eyes wide open. I didn't cry. I just felt a silent fear creeping into every crevice of my bones. I began to write a letter, not to my father, nor to Zaid, but to my mother, who was still as silent as a ghost in this house. If you still have a piece of your heart, remember that Amina asked you to. I don't want to be a second Amina. I'm not your shadow. Let me go. I folded the letter and stuffed it under her pillow while she slept. The next day, she didn't say a word, but I found the letter was gone. And when I looked up at the dining table, my mother's eyes were cold as frost. Don't be foolish, Naomi. No one escapes fate. I thought the pain came from the slaps. But no, the real pain was the silence from the person I thought would stand by me. After my father's harsh reaction, the whole family fell silent. No one mentioned the letter I left behind. My mother didn't ask, my father didn't say anything, and dinner went on as if nothing had happened. My younger brother, Sammy, was still sitting next to my father, smiling and talking happily like a perfect son. Only 19 years old, studying computer engineering, he was the pride of the family. I sat silently, my lips dry and cold. Everything seemed to be back to normal, except this time, I was no longer hallucinating. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of the door locking. I rushed to it, but it was too late. My door was locked from the outside. I called my mother, knocked on the door. No one answered. At noon, my mother brought the lunch tray up. She opened the door for a few minutes and then left. I asked, "Don't you think this is too serious?" Mother did not answer. I looked at her and lowered my voice. "You didn't have a choice either, right? You don't want me to repeat your life?" She stopped, put down the tray and said softly, "Better than ending up like Amina." I was stunned. It was the first time in years that my mother had mentioned my sister. You. Mom didn't nod or shake her head. She just turned and walked away, and the door closed again. I stayed in my room for 3 days. No phone, no computer. The TV was unplugged. Just 4 white walls and the occasional footsteps in the hallway. I started noticing every detail. The time my mother brought dinner, the time my father came home, the time Sammy went to his room, the sound of a cat in the backyard at night. I didn't eat much. I needed to stay awake. I started making mental maps. Where the cameras were, where the fire escape was, the code to the kitchen vault that my father used. I had seen it before. Sammy's birthday, 0312. That night, I tried tapping the floor 3 times, the signal Amina and I used to call each other. Silence. I opened the box hidden under my bed, where I kept things no one else should see, neighborhood maps, old bank cards, and a small USB stick containing recordings of my father's angry outbursts. I'm not sure they have any legal value, but if anything happens to me, at least there'll be a message. 3 days later, my father knocked on my door. I pretended to be exhausted, my voice trembling. "I'm sorry. I was just scared, but I changed my mind." He sat down and put his hand on my shoulder. "Zaid is a good man. You will not lack for anything." I nodded. "I know, I will listen." He smiled with satisfaction. "Don't be foolish. Sammy will keep an eye on you." I started acting. I ate dinner, cleaned up, said hello on time. I smiled, sometimes even complimented my mother's cooking. All the skills I had learned in sociology, observing behavior, hiding emotions, I used to survive. I learned. Dad sleeps very deeply after 11 p.m. Sammy listens to music with headphones. The rear door camera has a blind spot if you use a mirror to reflect light for 3 minutes. I need help. I thought of Sarah, my best friend from college, who had told me how she had escaped from a controlling family and lived anonymously for 2 years before getting legal help. I snuck into Sammy's room while he was in the shower and logged into his computer. Luckily, he was still using the same password. I sent Sarah an anonymous email, just 1 line. "Zaid is marrying me next month, same as you. I don't want to disappear." Sarah replied after 30 minutes, "I'll come." The night before the wedding. With a car, with someone, but you have to get out by yourself. I read the email over and over again, like a ticket to survival. I knew I had only one chance. That night, I held a small knife in the kitchen and held it under the light. Not to harm anyone, but for self-defense, if necessary. I try one last time. Mom. At 1 a.m., I knocked on her door. Mom, if you ever wished for your freedom, please help me. I can't live like my sister. My mother was silent for a long time. I thought she would turn her back. But then, trembling, she unlatched the door. Go, but never come back, and don't mention me. At 3 a.m., I quietly left the house through the back door. I used the small mirror to glare at the camera for 3 minutes. I crossed the old fence and passed through the bushes where I used to play hide and seek with Amina, and I did not look back. When I reached the end of the alley, I saw a black SUV with no license plate. Sarah jumped out of the car and hugged me tightly. You did it. I was really afraid you wouldn't come. I'm not crying. I'm just shaking. A middle-aged woman got out of the car and introduced herself as Martha, a human rights lawyer. She gave me a bottle of water and said, You are not alone, but we must leave now. I have reason to believe that your family will call the police within the next 2 hours. The car started moving. I turned around, one last time. The house where I grew up is now a dark, empty, cold mass. The car sped out of the residential area. I sat in the back seat, my hands still shaking from the adrenaline. Sarah turned to look at me, her face pale but her eyes full of determination. You are safe. But I know. We are only running towards danger, not escaping it. Martha, the calm woman sitting in the driver's seat, was talking on the phone while pressing the navigation button. Her voice was low and urgent. Left point. Moving on Route 2, checking tracking signals. I glanced at her phone, hidden location detection software. Martha hung up and turned to me. Naomi, your phone is tagged, and I suspect your bag is too. I widened my eyes. But I don't have a phone. Sarah interjected. Your dad wouldn't let her escape unprepared. He probably sewed the device into the lining of his clothes or put it in the zipper of his bag. Give me the backpack. I opened my backpack. Sarah was rummaging through everything: clothes, photocopies of papers, a water bottle, a notebook, and a small chip embedded in a keychain. Oh my God, she muttered. You were being followed. Martha opened the glass door and threw the chip out. Hopefully they haven't realized you've left yet, but it's only a few hours. We turned onto a deserted highway, then branched off onto a country road. No signs, no cameras. I asked, Where are we going? Martha replied, A temporary shelter run by a human rights organization. In Austin, I nodded, my eyes glued to the window. The sky was gradually lightening. The first rays of dawn stung my eyes. That's when I realized I had really left the house. I was no longer in a locked room. I was no longer little Naomi being watched. I'm free. At least for now. The safe house is located in an old but safe apartment complex. Sarah calls it a transition station, a place for women who have escaped violence or coercion. I was given a new phone, new SIM, temporary residence card, and another set of clothes. An employee of the organization named Lena gave me a quick tour. Common room, kitchenette, filing area. No one here is asking about anyone's past, Lena said. Just stay put for 72 hours. Then we'll give you legal help if you want to press charges or get a protection order. I nodded. 72 hours. I had been locked up for 3 days. Now I just needed to survive the first 3 days of freedom. In the afternoon, I sat down and wrote down everything. Every threat from my father. Every look from Zaid. Every cold sentence from my mother. I wrote it all down in a file and backed it up on a USB. Martha knocked on the door. I'll start the paperwork for an emergency restraining order tonight. But we need proof. I handed her the USB. Martha plugged it into her computer, listening quietly to the recording of my father hissing, If he doesn't get married, I will make sure he can't step out of the house again. Martha turned to look at me. Have you prepared for this in advance? I nodded. I don't just run. I fight. I fell asleep on the simple bunk bed. The nightlight was still on. Every little sound woke me up. But I still fell asleep because I was tired. For the first time in my life, I was not locked from the outside, but freedom did not last long. Day 2, a receptionist came to my room. Someone's here, said he's a relative. His name is Sammy. I was stunned. Sammy, my brother. No way, they can't know I'm here. The receptionist shook her head. They don't know the details. But he came to the main office, showed you a picture, said his brother was looking for him. The office called and asked. We declined to talk to him, but by policy, you need to know. I asked to see the camera. Sammy stood in front of the main building. His face panicked, his mouth constantly saying something to the security guard. But I didn't see anxiety. I saw script. He knew I would see. And I understood Sammy didn't come to take me home, but to confirm that I was really here. I rushed into the room calling Martha. They know, they're coming. Martha immediately activated emergency evacuation plan 10 p.m. I was taken out of the building through the back door and into another car driven by a volunteer. Lena stayed behind to collect my things. We split into 3 groups, each car headed in a different direction to avoid being followed. Sarah didn't come along this time. She said, I'll distract them if they follow my car. Naomi, don't let fear get the best of you. I was moved. Sarah, if anything happens, thank you for believing in me. She hugged me tightly and whispered, not because I trust you, but because you deserve to live. We had not been out of Austin for less than 20 minutes when the bus was blocked at the intersection by a white SUV without license plates. I recognized it right away. Zaid's car. My driver, a woman named Jenna, slammed on the brakes and yelled, "Get down." A man stepped out of the SUV, wearing a baseball cap and sunglasses. He approached, his hands in his coat pockets. I shivered. Does he have a gun? Jenna honked her horn and turned on her headlights, shining them straight into his face. He backed away. I'm calling the police, Jenna yelled through the glass. I have a dash cam. The man pulled out his hand. There was no gun, but there was a piece of paper. He held it up. This is a family summons. Naomi is suffering from psychological trauma. We have permission to take her back for treatment. Jenna cracked the window open. Back off or I'll send this video to my lawyer. Naomi is not a minor. The man was silent. Then he slowly backed away. The white SUV turned around. Our car sped toward the safety stop near San Antonio. When the car turned off, I realized I was so without sound. Jenna turned back. Are you okay? I nodded, but I couldn't speak. My breathing came in ragged, choking gasps. I'm not afraid of dying. I'm afraid of being dragged back, of becoming Amina's shadow, of living as if I were dead. We come to one higher level shelter with security and 24/7 surveillance. Martha was waiting. When I got out of the car, she didn't ask any questions, just opened her arms. I threw myself into his arms, allowing myself to be held for the first time in years. The next morning, Martha gave me a letter. We just received a complaint from your father. They claim you have signs of a mental disorder and need to be isolated for your own protection. I laughed. Actually, I am crazy, but not because I am sick, because of them. Martha squeezed my hand. We will fight back. We will use the law to prove that you are not crazy. You simply do not want to be destroyed. I nodded. And if necessary, I will pull Amina back from the shadows. To tell them, we are no longer silent. I used to think that the court was where justice was served. But as I sat in that courtroom that day, I understood. The truth is not enough. People need a voice loud enough, evidence cold enough, and a heart bold enough to stand tall in the storm of prejudice. Martha led me through the hallway of the trial courthouse in downtown Austin. The air was thick, as if the hallway were made of silent stone. I was wearing a light gray blazer that Sarah had given me. My makeup was light, my hair pulled back into a bun. I looked in the mirror and said to myself, "You are no longer little Naomi. Today you are the plaintiff." The courtroom was not large, but my parents' presence made it seem smaller by the centimeter. They sat on the opposite side, next to their personal lawyer, a white American man in a neat suit, with a name tag, Richard Lawrence. Sitting next to them, there was no one else but Zaid, looking as if he were attending an investment conference rather than a civil trial. His gaze swept over me, cold, appraising, and creepy. The same look he had given Amina. The judge was a middle-aged woman, Mrs. Evelyn Ramirez, salt and pepper hair, voice deep and precise like a scalpel. After the introduction, she said, "This is an urgent hearing on the application by citizen Naomi Khan for a restraining order against Mr. Farid Khan, Ms. Salma Khan, and Mr. Zaid al-Murad. The defendant has also filed a counterclaim, alleging that the plaintiff is mentally incompetent and needs to be placed under guardianship." Martha stood up. "Your Honor, my client is an adult, a full citizen, has a college degree, and no history of mental illness. She is simply fighting for the most basic right, the right to not be forced into marriage." Attorney Richard stood up, smiling professionally. "We don't deny that Naomi has a social interest. But it's clear that she's paranoid, haunted by her sister's death, and out of touch with reality. We have medical records confirming mild psychotic symptoms, including delusions of being stalked." I almost laughed. "They locked me up for 3 days, cut off my internet, attached a GPS tracker to my bag, and I have phantom surveillance?" Martha pulled the file from her bag. "Your Honor, here is an independent psychological evaluation from a third-party expert, Dr. Ellen Moriarty. Conclusion: my client is sane, suffering from temporary psychological stress due to an abusive family environment. There is no evidence of psychosis." The judge read it over and nodded. "Accept the case. Dr. Moriarty will be called as a witness if necessary." Attorney Richard smiled wryly. "However, we still believe that the family is just trying to protect their daughter from the incitement of anti-traditional organizations." Zaid added, his voice smooth, "I was Amina's husband. I was heartbroken when she went missing. I just wanted to make up for it by taking care of Naomi. She needed protectors, not exploiters." I chuckled. Martha squeezed my hand. I stand up and asked to speak. The judge nodded. I held the microphone, looking straight into Zaid's face. "Care? You married Amina, my sister, when she was 18. She disappeared after 8 months. No one investigated. No one was allowed to ask. Now you're going to marry me, the sister of your missing ex-wife, and call it compensation?" I pulled out a photo from my pocket. A photo of Amina's bruised arm, a fragment of an email I had found, probably sent by Amina from a public computer. "If you read this, Naomi, I'm sorry. They wouldn't let me live if I told the truth." No one in the room said a word. The judge asked, "Does the plaintiff have evidence of a threat from the defendant?" Martha nodded. She produced a USB stick containing recordings of my father's threats. "If she doesn't marry me, I will make sure she doesn't step out of the door," were the words of Mr. Farid Khan. The other side's lawyer retorted, "Recording may be spliced." Martha pulled out another USB. Here is the original uncut version, and 2 new passages, in which the defendant mentions lockdowns, electronic monitoring, and food portion control. The judge turned to my father. "Do you admit these words?" My father blushed and clenched his fists. I'm just a father. I have the right to teach my child." I interrupted. "Education is not imprisonment. My father did not raise me. He manipulated me. If I had not run away, today would have been the anniversary of my death, just like Amina." The atmosphere in the courtroom was as thick as tar. The judge looked at the parties. The court adjourned for 15 minutes for consideration. I went out into the hallway, my heart pounding. Sarah sat next to me, holding my hand. Whatever happened, you didn't stay silent today. You stayed true to yourself. 15 minutes later, we returned to the courtroom. The judge banged his gavel. The court granted a temporary restraining order for 14 days. Mr. Farid Khan, Ms. Salma Khan, and Mr. Zaid Al-Murad are prohibited from approaching Naomi Khan in any way, within a radius of 200 feet. An extension will be granted after further investigation into the connection between Amina Khan's disappearance and the defendant's conduct. The air in my chest burst. I had won, at least the first round. But before I could leave the courthouse, my new phone vibrated. Sarah opened the app. Naomi, you're being trolled on Facebook by your local Muslim community. I glanced at the screen. Naomi Khan's ungrateful daughter betrayed her family. Seduced by xenophobes. If anyone sees her, please call the police. The fatigue hit me like a tsunami. I couldn't breathe. I leaned my head on Sarah's shoulder and whispered, I lost everything, my family, my honor, my name. Sarah replied softly, not honor. I regained my dignity. That evening I sat down to continue writing the essay I had left unfinished. Freedom does not come from permission. This time, I don't just write to tell stories. I write to fight. Write in a way that Amina never had the chance to do. I sent the manuscript to an international human rights organization. 3 days later, they replied, we want to publish this. I nodded, but in my heart, I only hoped for one thing. If Amina was still alive somewhere, she would read this. I used to think survival was the reward. But no. It was just an entry ticket to a war longer, deeper, and often more terrifying than the hell I had lived through. The formal hearing is scheduled for the 14th day of the temporary restraining order. That morning, I stood in front of the mirror for a long time. I put on the gray blazer again, this time adding a small pin, not jewelry, but daughter's unbound small badge, like a small shield on the chest. I wasn't alone. Sarah walked beside me. Behind me were Martha and Patricia, 2 women who had decided to believe in me when the rest of the world had turned its back on me. The court was much more crowded today. The local press had already picked up on the unusual nature of the case. A South Asian woman is suing both her parents and her former brother-in-law for forced marriage and detention. My parents sat on the other side, accompanied by their lawyer. My father still looked dignified, dark suit, gold-rimmed glasses, hands clasped loosely as if waiting for a waiter. My mother, on the other hand, wearing black hijab, pale eyes, looked like he had just gone through a huge storm inside. Zaid was not present. He is under civil investigation. He has no right to appear at this hearing without an invitation. Martha opened the debate. Your Honor, we request indefinite protection for Naomi Khan from Mr. Farid Khan and Ms. Salma Khan, based on evidence of unlawful confinement, mental manipulation, psychological abuse, and conspiracy to commit forced marriage. The opposing lawyer counterattacked. We confirm that Naomi Khan is being influenced by an illegal organization and is showing signs of a paranoid disorder. Her family is just trying to protect her from long-term harm. Martha raised her hand. Then let her mother say it herself. My mother was called as a witness. The whole room held its breath. She stepped up to the podium, sat down, not daring to look at me. Patricia asked, Mrs. Salma Khan, may I ask, have you ever received a handwritten letter from your daughter asking for permission to leave the house? Mom was silent for a long time. Then she nodded slightly. I got it. What did you do with it? Mother bowed her head. I leave it to my husband. The court murmured. Why don't you help me? Mother's voice broke. Because I was scared. Because I tried once, and I was sent back. In the most painful way. Patricia looked at her. Have you ever witnessed Amina, your eldest daughter, being abused by her husband? A moment of silence. My mother burst into tears. Yes, I saw her being beaten, dragged into the room. But I couldn't save her. I couldn't save my daughter. The judge leaned over. Do you know where Amina is now? Mother choked. No. My husband said. It ran away, but after that night, I saw no blood. No crying. Just a suitcase burned in the backyard. The room was silent. I stood up without waiting for permission. I went straight to the podium. The judge tried to stop me, but I said, I want to speak not as a plaintiff, but as a surviving daughter. I pulled a stack of photos out of my pocket. Old photo of me and Amina, wedding photos, photos of bruises I secretly took in the mirror, a photo of the corner of the backyard where she disappeared, and the whole Amina's house designed for her two sisters, with the scribbled words, Freedom is home. I handed each sheet up, my eyes never leaving my father. You call me a disgrace? Then I accept it. But it is because I am a disgrace that I survive. Where are the good girls before me now? He stood up. You are a disgrace. I should have locked you up the day you learned to read. The judge banged his gavel. Mr. Farid Khan, keep quiet. I do not back down. Culture cannot be an excuse for violence. Religion can never allow a man to treat his daughter as a commodity. Love does not mean silence. Patricia stepped up and concluded, Your Honor, if there is anything to protect here, it is the right of a person, not to be forced into marriage, not to be imprisoned, not to have their dreams crushed. After many hours of trial, the judge declared, The court has decided to extend the restraining order indefinitely. Mr. and Mrs. Khan are prohibited from coming into contact with the plaintiff in any way. Naomi Khan has the right to live, study, work without being monitored, controlled or harassed by relatives or third parties. My arms fell limp. It was as if I had let go of a rock that had been hanging from my chest for 2 decades. I left the courtroom feeling lighter, but not happy. My mother called after me. You will die alone. No one marries a traitor. I turned back and looked at her, the one who had taught me how to tie my hair, and who had been silent when I was locked up. No one is born to marry, but every girl is worthy to live. Freedom is not the moment we walk through the gate. It's the moment we learn how to walk. Don't look back with fear. After the trial, I moved into a small apartment in a complex in East Austin that had warm yellow light from the balcony, a bookcase I painted myself, and a bed that no one had ever locked from the outside. The first day I lived alone, I kept the lights on all night. The knock on the door startled me. The sound of motorbikes on the street made me gasp. But as the days passed, I began to believe. Locks are for protection, not confinement. Sarah was still there for me, like a sister without blood. She came every weekend, bringing coffee, news about girls seeking shelter, and hugs I thought I didn't deserve. One day, she placed a file in front of me. Daughters Unbound would like to hire you as a full-time employee. Position: Coordinator of the Forced Marriage Admissions Program. I did not ask again. I signed up now. I start each morning reading emails from anonymous girls from the darkest corners of our community. There's Shazia, a 17-year-old who was threatened with being sent back to her country if she didn't agree to marry. There's Yasmin, who was locked in a basement for texting her classmate. And there's Aisha, 19 years old, from Florida. Naomi, I read your article. I know no one will believe me, but I am about to be forced into marriage. How do I start my escape? I was silent for a few seconds. Then I typed each word without hesitation. You are not alone. First, stay calm. Here are 3 things you need to do in the next 24 hours. I guided Aisha step by step, just as Sarah had done with me. When Aisha escaped safely a week later, I cried. Not out of fear, but out of understanding. The reason I'm alive is to be present for this moment. Essay. Freedom does not come from permission was shared by many feminist groups, international human rights organizations, and even a Texas congressman. A radio station contacted me to invite me for an interview. I hesitated, but then Sarah said, "You were a voice for Amina. Now be a voice for Aisha, and hundreds like her." I agree. The first time I sat in the studio, mic in front of me, headphones pressed against me, I felt my hands shaking. But when the host asked, "Naomi, do you think your parents ever really loved you?" I took a deep breath. I remembered the gloomy kitchen, my mother sitting silently by the window, Amina trembling by the hospital bed. My father's words, "I raised you not for you to humiliate me." I replied, "I believe they loved me, but love never justifies control. True love is liberating." A year after I ran away, I stood in the middle of a large auditorium at the University of Texas, the first conference on freedom of marriage choice in minority communities, organized by Daughters Unbound and the feminist student group. The room was packed, cameras, tape recorders, writers, all eyes were on the stage. I step up. No sticky notes, no support screen, just me and memories. I recount the journey. About Amina, the sister who was the shelter of my childhood. About Zaid, the man who disappeared all the dreams in my family. About my father, the man who believed that honor was more valuable than life. About my mother, the woman who never dared to speak, but who was the one who unbolted the door for me that night. About the time I was stopped in the street. About the first slap. About the letter written by flashlight. I don't shake. I don't cry. I just say. Each word seems to cut through the dust of time, exposing everything. Finished, I looked around the room. You may call me a traitor, an ungrateful person, a spoiled child, but I am just a man who dares to live. And to live, not in the way others dictate, is the most sacred thing. The applause was thunderous. I looked down at the front row. There was a girl sitting next to Sarah. Short hair, puffy eyes, tight mouth. It was Aisha. The girl nodded at me, her lips trembling. "You saved me." I smiled. "Number I saved myself. You were just the lamplighter. I have legally changed my name. Naomi Khan is no longer a name on paper, but it lives on inside me, like a scar, a vow, a door closed forever, but leaving an echo. I might never go back to my old house. There might be no one to cook me the green bean curry of my childhood anymore. But in return, I have a choice. I have a voice. And I have the right to say no.